Hey everyone. I'm not sure you can hear me well, so I'm going to put my headset on. If I can figure out my headset. There we go. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining. I know I said that I was going to be canceling today, and then I said, what the heck, I'm going to try and do this at my in-laws. So this is me trying to do the live in a new location. Drop me an emoji if you're here. Let me know who's here. And let me know where you're joining from, where you are geographically located. And while you do that, I'm just going to check to see how the audio is doing. Oh, and actually, while you guys are dropping emojis and letting me know that you're here, I would love to hear what your experience has been like this week. In terms of your energy, like how you feeling? Have you been emotional? It was a spring equinox, and that's a pretty big deal because we're coming out of winter. We're coming out of this like hermit phase, and we're starting to like come out with being seen and birthing new ideas, and just like, you know, everything that becomes revealed as that snow melts and spring comes forth. So that's what we got going on. So let me know how you guys have been feeling, because I know my energy. Awesome. My energy has been wild. And I think wild is an understatement. So for those of you that are new, my name is Cristal Valenzuela, and I am a multidimensional medium. And hey, Jackie, thanks so much for joining. I'm a multidimensional medium. So I work with past loved ones, ancestors, spirit guides, and I also work with a lot of different modalities. And I like to have the focus on how I use them as opposed to what I'm using, because the way I see it. And hi, Bobby. Oh, I'm so sorry you've been feeling like pew pew. But like all things, this shall pass. Yeah, so I work with a lot of different modalities, and I like to focus on how I use them as opposed to what it is that I'm using, because I feel like it's the context that really supports the intention, and I believe that's where the magic happens. So, so Bobby, I'd love to hear what you make of how you've been feeling. And the reason why I ask is because I've been crying all week and all weekend, but it feels good. It feels like a release. And I'm realizing, because I just had energy work done yesterday, I realized that I have a very strong field up around me. And so there are times where I feel like I'm very numb. And I know I'm like desensitized. And I've been wondering, like, why am I so stoic? And I realize now it's because of this field. Shout out to my girl Erica, who does my energy healing. I realize it's this field that I have up that is keeping me from feeling all the feels. But when we feel the feels, that is when we have an opportunity to turn around and go back to where we came from, or dig deeper into our mission and anchor ourselves in what it is that we're becoming and what we're doing. And that's what I believe. Okay. So today I'm going to be doing some Q&A. And so if you guys have questions, and you're welcome to ask questions about anything with regards to energy, what's happening in the energy right now. If you had a personal experience and you'd like some insight, I won't necessarily be reading people. And if you have any questions about the content that I shared last week on the energy body. I also have some questions from Instagram where people drop some questions that they'd like answered. So I'll be addressing some of those today. And before I get started, I just want to go over a few things. So May 15th, I have a very special gallery reading coming up. If you are not already on my mailing list, join and you will receive updates when all of these are released. And I always send my newsletter at the end or at the beginning of the month around that transition time. And I include all my upcoming events there. I also have a psychic and mediumship development circle coming up on April 17th and then on May 22nd. And these circles are really for practicing mechanics. So if you're looking to connect with your intuition, and I like to think of it as like the psychic gym. So whether you're already actively exercising these muscles or not, I teach you how to connect, and then we do some practice. So this last Tuesday, I had a group past life regression, and it was really fun. It was really good. And if you're not familiar with what a past life regression is, it's basically a guided meditation. We do it through hypnosis. Because it's a group, we're limited to how deep into hypnosis you can get. And we get really deep when I do the one-on-one work. But we did a past life regression with a group on Tuesday, and there were some really interesting past lives that came up. And if you're thinking like, why would someone want a past life regression? There is a lesson to every life. There's a lesson and a purpose to every life. And so we recall a past life to help us understand the lesson or message that we need to understand for this lifetime. If you've ever done any type of divination, whether it's getting a reading, whether it's reading cards, whether it's numerology, whatever it is, it all serves the same purpose of helping you have awareness and clarity to what it is that you need to know for this present moment. And that's what a past life regression can do for you. So it really is, there is no one size fits all divination practice. And there's no one size fits all divination practice that, will resonate with you. So past life regression is another opportunity to access the information. Welcome from New York. I am actually in Ajachiman lands, also known as Tongva, or known by colonizers as Los Angeles. Hey Leslie, thanks so much for joining. Okay, so my next past life regressions are on April 14th and May 20th. You can register for all of these events through my website under classes and events. And I've extended the code CANON for free registration to both of these events. So it is limited to each event, only a certain number of spaces available at this discounted code. So jump on it. Two more announcements, and then I'll start jumping into Q&A. So if you guys are just joining, I am doing a Q&A today. So you can start dropping any questions that you have, and I'll get right to them as soon as I finish my announcement. So my Connect and Work with Your Spirit Guides course, on demand, $35 until the end of March. Starting April 1st, that price is going to go up to $70. And what you get in the course, when I do the course live, it's usually about 2 hours of content. So I've broken it up into shorter videos in a Facebook group. And what we're doing is we're creating a community. So we're experiencing the content and then learning from each other's individual experiences and creating a greater shared experience. And I believe that when we do it in a community like this, that we actually amplify the lessons and we uncover more. And so that's why I chose to put it on a Facebook group. So what you get in the course is the regular content that I go over in a live class. But you also get, I want to say it's maybe 2 or 3 guided meditations that help you really ground yourself, and also walk you through meeting your guides, walk you through meeting elemental guides. And this price is for lifetime access. There will be new content added as new content comes up. And then I do a 1-hour live each month in the group. So if anyone has any questions, I answer questions live in the group. Hi, Blair. Thanks so much for joining. Your Wi-Fi is crazy today. My Wi-Fi is crazy as well. Okay, so Blair is asking, how do you get to where the course is on sale? So I'm going to drop the link, or I'll drop the, yeah, it's the link. I'm going to drop the link. I'm not sure if it will work or if you'll have to copy and paste it from what I share. Okay, so that's the link if you want to sign up for the class. You can also just go to my website, which is the www.chriselcam.com, and it's under classes and events. It's the Spirit Guides class. So again, that goes up to $70 starting April 1st. And what you get is lifetime access. Lifetime access. And then you also get once a month. Yes, it is on my website. Once a month, I do a 1-hour live to answer any questions. And there's actually a thread in the group where you can just drop any questions that you have. So if you're not able to attend the live videos are saved automatically in the group, and I'll answer your questions whether you're there or not. So you still get access to me and guidance from me, just like you would have in a live setting. Okay, so if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm answering questions today on last week's content of the energy body. If you have any questions, whether spiritual, metaphysical, or about energy that you're curious about, feel free to drop them. I'll answer it all. And I have a few questions that came up from my Instagram that I'll be addressing as well. The first question was, do you see and hear things literally, or is your psychic ability mostly feeling? So what I believe this question is in reference to is clairvoyance is clear seeing, clairaudience is clear hearing, and it depends. So sometimes, well, what I see is kind of like a movie screen in my head. So when you're dreaming, or when you're imagining, or when you're daydreaming, and you see that going on in your head, that's the same faculty that I'm using when I see spirit, or how I see the message coming through when I am in a reading. When I hear something, I am usually hearing it in my mind. So it's kind of like recalling a song or recalling a memory, and then your memory includes having a conversation with someone. So I don't actually hear a physical voice, like as if someone's standing next to me. It's more like I'm imagining this voice. And when I give a reading, usually when I start my readings, I set the expectation of how to expect the information to come through to me, because it just kind of flows, and I'm not always in the mindset to explain like how it's working, but not to freak people out when I'm in a reading. I usually explain, like, I receive messages by seeing symbols and images in my mind's eye. Sometimes I see like a little movie playing. Sometimes I hear certain sounds. Sometimes I'll hear songs or conversations, and sometimes actually hear like full conversations, and sometimes I'm hearing, I've had it happen a couple of times where I hear like the cadence of someone talking, and what I'm getting out of it is that, oh, they're speaking a foreign language, and I could tell by like the way that they're talking that they're like a leader, because they have that like a very confident and direct way of speech. I do feel I do feel sensations in my body when I do readings as well. And that goes a couple of ways. So usually when I do a one-on-one reading and I'm doing maybe evidential mediumship, so like you want to connect with your mom who's passed away, one of the pieces of evidence that I ask for is how did they pass? And so I'll feel it in my body, and it feels like it's happening in a certain part of my body. If I hone in on it, maybe I could identify which organ it feels like it's in and what it felt like. I also feel energy sensations through different regions of my body. And when it's not in regards to evidential mediumship, that has to do with each part of our body represents something different. And it's similar to Ayurveda and similar to traditional Chinese medicine, where if I feel it in my back, depending if it's my upper or lower back, it actually, for me, it corresponds to the energy center in that area. And in the back versus the front mean two different things. The other way that I feel energy through a reading is, I call it my spidey sense, where it's just tingling. I feel tingling all over, and that is usually because there's a level of interpretation to what I'm relaying, that I start to feel that when when I'm delivering the message that Spirit wants me to deliver. And I think that question was from Lil Champ on Instagram. Okay, so I'll move on to the next question. Okay. The next question is, would you say that the food we consume has a direct influence on the strength of our spirit? Yes, 100%. So I think that's a really great question. And I feel like the person that asked this question already knew the answer because it was like a farm share account. But yes, the food that we consume absolutely affects our spirit, our spiritual well-being, our mental, emotional states. And it's on so many different levels, because it's not just like, oh, is this healthy food? It goes much deeper than that. And the more sensitive we are to energy, the more closer to like the source of how that food was created we need to be mindful of. And the idea is that we are energy. And so the energy that you're bringing into your energy, the energy of whatever it is that you bring into your energy, whether it be food, whether it be a book, whether it be, whatever the object is, whether it's like digestible or not, all of that will affect your energy. So I do identify as very sensitive, as highly sensitive. And to give you an example, I'm allergic, or I'm intolerant. My gut is intolerant of lots of different foods. I mostly eat vegetarian because when I eat different kinds of meat, I either will have an allergic reaction or I will break out in a rash. And so, like shellfish, I carry an EpiPen for shellfish. And this started happening about 3 years ago. Yeah, 3 or 4 years ago, it started happening. If I have a lot of allergies to different fruits too. So it just depends. And what I feel is that it has a lot to do with how is the food raised. So farming. A lot of commercial farmers are not concerned with the well-being of the livestock. A lot of large commercial companies are focused on profitability margins. So they're not so concerned with stewardship. They see both employees and their what they're raising as disposable. Like they just see it as a cycle. And while that is true to an extent, our relationship to that and how we balance it and our reverence for it also matter. So there are certain foods like fruits that I'm also allergic to, and I haven't done it yet because I'm not that I don't. It wasn't until recently that I really do have time to like garden and stuff. Um, but I'd like to experiment with growing food myself and seeing how my body does consuming and digesting food that I grow myself. Because when you grow it yourself, you are more aware of what gets put into it, what kind of energy is put into that. And the same can be said with like livestock. So if I were to raise my own animals, or if I were to go to a local farmer that I know cares for their livestock, I know it kind of it almost makes it like, well, where's the balance? Because a part of me, I remember it was probably 10 or 11 years ago. My husband and I went to Vegas. We ate at a nice restaurant and we ordered rabbit. I couldn't eat it because as a child, I had a pet rabbit. Well, these animals aren't domesticated for us to make them pets. They're actually wild animals. And um, their, their purpose in life is not to be pets. Their purpose in life is to be wild and free. And I'm not saying that all of them have the purpose to be hunted and consumed, but that is a circle of life in nature. So it's almost like I victimize the rabbit because I could not honor the life that it lived and just eat the damn rabbit. I had such a hard time with that. So I feel that there is a balance between consuming animals and doing it ethically or sustainably. So Blair has a question. What would it be if you get a thought or phrase in your mind, but you're not hearing it? Oh, what is Ayurveda? Um, you just heard me talk about it and you got an email recently titled about it. Great questions. So if you got a phrase in your mind, but you didn't actually hear it, it would be called claircognizant. So I say pump the brakes because a lot of times when people are going through psychic development or intuition development, they get really caught up in titling and labeling the mechanics of it instead of just being in the flow of it. And I find that that's probably the biggest issue that people come across is that they block themselves from being in the flow of it. So when you get info and you don't actually hear it, you don't actually see it, that's claircognizance, because essentially what's happening is it's like it's your own thought. Now I say don't worry about how it's coming through. Just receive it and share it. Receive it and share it. Like that's the flow that you want to be in, because when you start to intellectualize and identify, well, how is this info coming through? Then you take yourself out of the flow, and then you get into you change your flow from receiving the information to like judging the information and categorizing the information as opposed to like what is the actual content. If you have questions on that, Blair, just because I know how it is, one answer might open up a can of worms. So go ahead and drop that in the chat if you have any other questions. So I mentioned traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda, and these are both Eastern health modalities. So traditional Chinese medicine is traditional Chinese medicine. Ayurveda is the like holistic health practice in India, and I'm actually gonna look it up. So, okay, it's not just specific to India. So Ayurveda is a traditional Hindu system of medicine, which is based on the idea of balance and bodily systems. And then Ayurveda uses diet, herbal treatment, and yogic breath to like kind of move from one move through the different things that you could be feeling in your body. So there are lots of tests online that you can actually take to understand your Ayurvedic composition. And in Ayurveda, and maybe this is something that I could share with you guys, because I know a couple people that practice Ayurveda, and maybe I could have someone come on and share more about the basics of Ayurveda in one of my Third Thursday teachings. But there, I want to say, yeah. So there are 3 different body types in Ayurveda, which are Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. And I could be saying those incorrectly, so I apologize. But what these different body types are, they're called doshas. And let's see if I could bring this up. These different doshas have to do with, it's going to sound like if you've ever watched the Last Airbender, or no, Avatar, The Last Airbender. If you've ever seen the Avatar, they manipulate different elements. So Ayurveda is not like that, but it reminds me of that because these 3 different doshas have to do with like, is your body mostly composed of air or heat, or I think water is probably the other one. And so understanding your body composition then helps an Ayurvedic practitioner to help you understand, what does your body need to find balance? What does your body need to find balance? So, and then they may use different supplements, like herbal supplements, to help you understand that. I'm going to drop a link here, share with you, because this might be really helpful for you. And thank you, Leslie, for joining us. I hope that, I know that my comments when I drop it in StreamYard, that they don't always make it to Facebook, but I'm going to drop this here for you. And in Ayurveda, they do consider certain foods to be more on the heat side, air side, water side. And so depending on your body type, they may encourage you to eat certain foods to help bring balance to your body. Yes, there are lots of, I mean, especially now. So Blair wrote that the email was, I think it's advertising for Ayurveda trading. So I would say that especially now, with so many people really digging into alternative health, alternative to Western medicine practices, that a lot more people are digging into Ayurveda, a lot more people are digging into traditional Chinese medicine, a lot more people are just trying to broaden their understanding of their health. And I think that's great because I think it's so important that we question our relationship to everything, whether it be our relationship to Western medicine and how we understand it, and whether we let that be the only definition, or if we seek to question it so that we can either deepen our connection to it and our understanding of it, or if we seek to kind of do like a test and see if could there be something else for me. I bring that up because I am a believer that what we experience in our body is an indication of our mental, emotional well-being. And because we are creating our reality on a soul level, which then manifests our mental, emotional, which then manifests our physical. And so, depending on your belief system, there is no one size fits all. I'm always going to say that. But the way I see it is that if you grew up in the Western medicine paradigm, chances are you're going to need a level of Western medicine to treat whatever symptoms you're having. But as you start to do the work to expand your consciousness, you might come to a point where you're questioning the methods of Western medicine. And you may question it to the point where you feel like this medicine is just a band-aid, and I want to get to the source, and I want to heal myself at the source. And so maybe you start questioning that Western medicine is not preventing, it's just band-aiding. It's kind of like when you watch those cartoons and you see a dam and they're like poking their finger in the hole to try and like stop the water from leaking. I feel like Western medicine in a lot of ways is that there's already these cracks, and instead of trying to seal up all the cracks or build a new dam, they're just sticking a finger in the holes to keep it from getting worse. It all depends on your belief system. I had this conversation over the weekend with some sisters because I went on a retreat, and one of them was talking about how the vaccine is not good for you, how the COVID vaccine is not good for you, and how people shouldn't be getting the COVID vaccine, but there's so many people that are scared. And I actually said that it depends on your belief system, because if you believe in Western medicine and someone tells you like, oh, the vaccine is bad for you, like if you believe in Western medicine, but then you're like, oh, but someone just told me that it's not good for me, and then you don't get it, you're putting yourself in more harm because you believe in that system. So you should get that vaccine. Unless you've done something with someone telling you like, oh, the vaccine's not good for me, but you've actually integrated it into your belief system and you believe that down in your bones, you should still be getting the vaccine. There are people out there, though, that feel healthy and secure, and they don't feel a rush or a fear around having to get the vaccine now in order to be safe. And maybe those people, like, depending on what's going on in their head and what their beliefs are, maybe they don't need to get it. So I do think it really depends on the person and what their beliefs are and, you know, where they're coming from. So Blair mentioned, I totally agree. I'm a nurse, but I'm all for holistic alternative medicine, holistic/alternative methods. I wish that insurance would pay for alternative things for people like they do Western medicine. Yes. And you know what? It took a long time for chiropractic care and acupuncturists to be covered by insurance or any kind of healthcare coverage. So I do believe that it's a possibility that insurance will get there. I've heard, I forget where I heard this from, but I heard that insurance companies are starting, or doctors are starting to switch to a model where they only get paid for based on how, and I think I might be saying this wrong, but doctors would be paid based on how successful their preventative care is. So it's a model not based on charging for services, but a model likely based on like how much of my patient population is, excuse me, how much of my patient population is staying healthy. And I believe this is what they do in China, where doctors are only paid when their patients stay healthy, as opposed to they get paid per surgery, per x-ray, per lab, per whatever that they have done. So I think I heard about this when it was more than a year ago, because I remember I was still in the office. And I think it was when JP Morgan and maybe Amazon were like, we're going to come out with a healthcare solution. And so there were a lot of conversations about how is this going to change. And I remember I was attending conference calls and presentations on this switch of how medical coverage could work and how the healthcare system would be incentivized. So I do feel like someday that could certainly be a possibility. But good stuff, right? Thanks for bringing that up. Okay, so someone asked, um, I think this is from Lance on Instagram. In my past, I've had visions of physical beings and or ghostly shapes during, in parentheses, some have told me, sleep paralysis, but it never felt like that to me. I always felt like I had full consciousness and choose not to move during these visions/apparitions. Have you had anything similar to this, and or what are your thoughts of these kind of occurrences? So I think that's a really interesting experience. For some people, it could be sleep paralysis. And what sleep paralysis is, when we're dreaming, we astral travel. So our astral body, which for simplicity's sake, could be considered our spirit, leaves the body and goes and travels and journeys through dimensions. And that's the dream. And what sleep paralysis can be is when you wake up before your spirit's back. So your eyes are open, but then you're not fully integrated into your body, so it doesn't feel like you have autonomy over your physical body. From your explanation of seeing different beings and ghostly shapes, I feel like what you're experiencing is astral travel. And because you mentioned that you believe it's sleep paralysis based on what other people tell you, I feel strongly that it is actually astral traveling. I have not had experiences where I am conscious during astral traveling, unless it's lucid dreaming. And the physical beings or ghostly shapes that you're seeing, it could be based on the dimensions that you're astral traveling in that you're seeing. So depending on what dimension you're in, you could see people like you and I. If you're like in the fourth dimension, which is kind of like a, I'm transition dimension or like a portal, that's where we get a lot of thought forms, and that's where we get a lot of earthbound beings, which could appear as like ghostly shapes or be kind of like it could look like a smudge, or it could, what I'm describing is definitely not the definition, but this is often what people experience. It could also be totally different for you based on what your beliefs are around what's spooky and what's ghostly. So it's just astral travel. It's just astral travel. And for some people, it happens naturally. For others, it's something that you could teach yourself. But yeah, I feel like I don't have much more to add to that because it seems pretty straightforward. This question, I think, is from Filipinx Pages. When did you start trusting your intuition and stop dismissing it as anxiety, imagination, something that could be easily explained, and how can others do the same? I like this question. Thanks, Blair. Blair said, you're like a full set of encyclopedias. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so trusting your intuition and to stop dismissing it as anxiety, imagination, something that could be easily explained, and how can others do the same? So whenever I teach people, I always teach people to take baby. Oh, yes, I am. Yes, spiritual gangster. It's also a yoga brand. And I used to work in downtown LA where the fashion district is, where they usually have like sample sales. So I got this from a sample sale. So trusting your intuition. So first I want to acknowledge that anxiety and anxiety, depression, even psychosis, I believe that these are all symptoms and syndromes that are associated with energy. Yes, I do believe that energy is everything. But hear me out. When people feel anxious, it's usually that they're feeling a surge of energy, whether it be a surge of energy from the earth, a surge of energy from like electronics, whether it be a surge of electricity from people and their surroundings. And I believe anxiety is a symptom of a surge of energy taking place. In one of my first group readings, there was a participant there who had horrible anxiety. He actually ended up leaving because his anxiety got so bad. And I talked to my teacher about it afterwards, and she explained to me how it means that that person's very sensitive psychically. And I understand that because that happens to me too. And sometimes I have to ask myself, is this me or is this someone else? So when you think about your imagination or anxiety, like the different things that you're feeling, it all comes back to energy. Now, when did I start trusting my intuition instead of, thanks for joining, Blair. Have a great day. So when did I start trusting my own intuition as opposed to trying to rationalize it? I did not actively seek to develop my psychic senses. I actually, excuse me. Okay. So I attended a workshop in 2019. It was January of 2019. And I was trying to find a way I was trying to look for self-care practices. So at the time, I was feeling very ill. I was feeling physically ill from work. And in retrospect, it was because it was a toxic work environment on multiple levels. I was feeling very depressed. And that was also that was actually because of social media and just the culture of like, let me market this perfect life while I go and live like a totally different life. And I found myself going to a therapist because I was feeling like I didn't know what was normal anymore. I felt like I wasn't grounded and that I could really use support with that. So I went to this licensed social worker therapist, and she was actually an energy healer. She didn't use energy healing on me, or at least that I know of, and I'm sure she didn't unless I consented. Um, but I went to her. She helped me feel very grounded again. And then I went to this intuition development workshop because I wanted to learn meditation, what is grounding myself, and what is raising my vibration. So that's when I started my conscious relationship with developing my intuition and trusting myself. So I feel like my story is very different from what most people go through. And I do feel that when people are going through this process of like learning to trust themselves and trust their intuition, that it takes baby steps. So when you get the nudge to wear different shoes, are you going to do it or are you going to talk yourself out of it? Because there are so many times during the day that we are talking ourselves out of doing all kinds of things. And I'll give you an example. So I was packing my things to go somewhere. And I wore shoes, which wearing shoes is not a problem. But I was wearing shoes that my kids could easily get dirty and it would be a problem. And I felt to myself like I should bring extra shoes. And I didn't. And then when I got to wherever I was going, I realized why I should have brought those extra shoes. Um, so that's a little thing. And it's usually in these little things that if we can't do the little things, and I'm not saying that if you don't do the little things, you can't do the big things, but it's usually that's where we start. We start by not trusting ourselves on the little things. And so then that snowballs into a greater distrust on the bigger things. And that's how most of us work. So when it comes to trusting yourself and trusting your intuition, it's like, will you play with it and have fun with it? And all the little nudges that you get, will you humor them? Will you try them out? Because even if you try it out and you're like, oh, this is not for me, you can always turn around and go back to where you came from. You can always go back and change your mind. So the reward though, when you do trust yourself, is always worth it. Because knowing that you can trust yourself is a fantastic feeling. It's an amazing feeling. I think if I go back to when I first started developing my mediumship, I would always hold back. I would always hold back because it was I started practicing in a group, in like an intermediate group, and everyone in that group, the group was described as, if you know how to connect, then you should come to this group, and then we practice together. And everyone there had been practicing for months and months and months. And for me, I had just taken the workshop, the beginner workshop. And so taking this intermediate group, like I felt like I didn't belong, but I kept going. I kept going, I kept practicing, and I just got better each and every time. So that was my reward for trusting myself. The more I trusted myself, the more information came through, the more I allowed the information to come through. So, yeah. I laugh because I think about when I started giving readings. I remember in the very first class I was in, my partner, I remember telling her, I see coral. It was like a shadow figure of coral. And I was like, I don't know what it means. The end. It was funny. And I've come such a long way. So that is the progression that you can make, is like, just share the damn thing and show yourself what you're capable of. And you'll be surprised at how far you can go if you trust yourself. I do often like to bring it to the bigger picture. And so when I think about when I began to trust myself, I think it started with taking that class, as far as like far fetched as it felt and as out of place as I felt being in that class. But that was the first step in trusting myself, is like, I really want to take this class, so I'm going to take this class. And then learning like, oh, I really like doing readings. This is really fascinating. So I'm going to keep giving these readings. And then getting to the point of, what else do I feel like doing that I'm going to let myself do? So from there, I actually went on to switch careers because, as I mentioned, I was in a very toxic work environment. And because I started to trust myself and have confidence in myself for the decisions I was making, I made a career switch. I worked in the same company, but I switched roles. And because I kept trusting myself, it snowballed. And next thing I knew, I was making the six-figure salary doing work that I loved, helping people, being in front of people, getting to talk to people and help them grow their businesses. That's what I did. And I feel like all those things were part of a path to where I am now, to know that I created that reality and that it wasn't the job, it was me, and trusting me and allowing me to just let me do my thing, which helped me get to the point where I am today, where I said, I could quit that corporate job and I could do the things that make me that I feel passionate about, and recreate that same kind of success there, because it was me. I was the reason why I did that. And that's my goal when I work with people one-on-one, is I want to get people to that same point where they recognize that they are the ones. They are the successful, wow, the X factor. They always had it. And their wow factor is so unique that it doesn't need to be like me. It doesn't need to be like the person next to them. That they just need to be themselves. Okay, I don't think I have time for any more questions. Um, Unless someone wants to drop a question real quick. I had one more, but I don't think I'll be able to answer completely. So thank you guys for joining. Join me here next week. You could register on my website for these free events in order to get reminders. I may be changing the schedule, but I'll be visiting that in May. And the reason why I'm going to be changing the schedule is because I'm going to start doing, I'm looking for an office space. So that's exciting. And I might have one. And if this first office space works out and becomes available soon, I'll be doing quantum healing hypnosis technique sessions on Thursdays. And those can take a lot of energy out of me. So to do that and then do these live demonstrations or live hours all in the same day could be a little iffy. Like, they could get interesting. So I might be changing the time and I might be changing the day altogether. But before I do that, if you guys are on Instagram, please follow me at christelcan.medium, because I'll probably post a poll on my Instagram stories on what days look best for you guys. And if the time and the date changes and you guys aren't able to make those live, the videos are always posted on my YouTube and on in my Facebook group, my private Facebook group, so that you could rewatch them at your own leisure. And if you guys are new, you can always watch those older videos too, because the messages have no restriction on time and space. You could watch a video from like 3 months ago and you probably have incredible resonance with what came through. So I just want to take a second to thank you all so much for joining me, and I hope to see you again next Thursday. Have a great weekend.